Dear ladies and gentlemen, welcome to one of Naseej Academy series of webinars that aim to share knowledge, ideas, and reflection on topics of interest, new trends, and rapid technologies in field of learning, libraries, and cultural institutions, in addition to knowledge management and digital transformation. As an inception of today's webinar, let me share with you that this webinar is special not only because of its topic, which is talking about engaging strategically with the artificial intelligence, but also it comes as a part of the strategic partnership between Naseej Academy and the Royal Commission for Jubail and Yamba. So I am honored to give Dr. Shaker Rida the mic to welcome you on behalf on the Royal Commission. Then I will take the lead from him after he finished to introduce our speaker. Please, Dr. Shaker, the virtual floor is yours.
Yes, Professor Mahmoud, thank you very much, and thank for all. By the beginning, the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful, ladies and gentlemen. This is Dr. Shaker Rida. I'm privileged to welcome you all on behalf of the education sector for Yamba and Jubail at Royal Commission Saudi Arabia. We're delighted you join us for this special occasion, and I'm deeply grateful of presenting today. First, please let me thanks and welcome Naseej Academy, our esteemed partner in our collaborative journey formalized through our Memorandum of Understanding. We have valued this partnership immensely. I would also like to warmly welcome our distinguished guest, Dr. Andrew Cox, Senior Lecturer at the Information School, University of Sheffield, and Convenor of the IFLA Special Interest Group of Artificial Intelligence. His experience is truly great assist to our gathering. Today, we have together for this virtual event to discuss the important topic of engaging strategically with artificial intelligence. In our fast-changing world, artificial intelligence, it's not still or just a trend. It is reshaped how we learn, work, and connect. It is impacting to our touch, even aspect of our life, making our crucial for our engaging with our life and I mean strategically in all our life aspect. We are all here because to understand and I mean going deeply and furthermore and for the future is about harnessing our technology to our advantage while ensuring we do so in a way that benefit of our community and society. We are eager today to learn from Dr. Cox's deep insight and experience, and I believe his knowledge will enrich our understanding, and we aim to advance digital and information literacy, even like display a pivotal role in that journey. As well, I want to thank each of you for being today here with us, with you and professional or introduced person by wonders of artificial intelligence. Your attendance today is essential in our shared effort to foster progress, understanding, also collaboration in this field. I hope this event provides you with a new perspective and inspiring you, exploring the possibilities that ahead. Once again, welcome to you all, and may Allah guide us toward what is good and beneficial. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Mahmoud.
Thank you, Dr. Shaker, for this warm and informative welcoming. Dear our participants, once we all stand on the brink of an AI-driven era, I would like to share with you my beliefs, which is I think The main advantage of artificial intelligence is the creation of new intelligence for human. As as a matter of fact, AI is not just a tool. It is a catalyst for innovation, enabling us to analyze vast amount of data, enhance decision-making processes, and improve efficiency across various sectors. However, engaging with AI strategically requires a deep understanding of its implication, ethical consideration, and the necessity for the robust framework that aligns with the organizational objectives. To talk about this topic, we are delighted to have with us Dr. Andrew Cox as our honorary speaker for tonight. He is senior lecturer at Information School at University of Sheffield, United Kingdom, convener of the IFLA Special Interest Group on Artificial Intelligence. His specialties area are AI and libraries, research, data management, libraries, and well-being. So he is the best one to talk about this strategical approach for artificial intelligence. I'll not add more, and I will leave Andrew to tell us about the topic that he will touch it under this umbrella, but I try to mention that please write down all the questions and inquiries you will think about or popped in your head during the presentation. And at the end of the presentation, Dr. Andrew, and for sure the engagement from Dr. Shaka and from my side will fulfill these questions. Also, I need to draw your attention that there is an Arabic translation on the other channel, bottom line, this screen. Thank you, Dr. Andrew, for being with us. We all waiting for you to uncover the secrets of artificial intelligence from strategical approach. The mic is yours, Dr. Andrew, please.
Thank you so much, Professor Metwali, and of course, Dr. Shekhar Reda as well. And thanks to the Naseej Academy for inviting me to give the talk. And thank you to everyone for making time to listen to what I've got to say. I beg for your patience because, of course, I might speak quite quickly. I hope it'll be possible to follow. And of course, you've got the translator to help. Yes. As one other additional bit of assistance, I posted into the chat a link to the slides. So if you want to jump ahead and see what we're going to discuss, you can see them there. So the link to the slides is in the chat. I'm from the University of Sheffield in the United Kingdom. We're an information school, so we teach students about data science, but also librarianship, information management. And we're a member of the iSchool movement. I personally am the convener of the IFLA Special Interest Group on AI. This is what I'm going to try and cover today. And it's going to involve, I hope, some participation from yourselves, gives you a chance to give your opinion. Sometimes this will be in the chat box where you can say what you think or ask your question. And sometimes we've got some polls set up also to gather information. I think that's always one of the most interesting parts of these talks, is to hear what other people in the session are thinking. There's a lot of people online today. Hopefully, most of you will be willing to participate. And when we get the votes, we can see what your experiences are and get a flavour of what's happening across the country. So I'm hoping that's going to happen. But so we have a bit of introduction. I'm going to say something about the nature of artificial intelligence, and look at some definitions, think about its ethical dimensions in particular, and think about how AI might fit into library work. And part two is thinking about how the library's view of AI will be positioned in relation to wider strategies, such as your government strategies or the strategy of a wider institution. If you're in a university library or context, it could be the university strategy about AI. I have to think about, we fit into these wider strategies. Then talking a little bit about applying some of the classic strategy building tools like forcefield analysis, so that we can analyze our situation and develop a slightly more strategic approach to this topic. Then part 4 is thinking about all the things we can actually do and control, be it in our individual work as professional or as a manager of a library. What kind of things can we do in terms of developing collaborations, which I think is really important in the AI context, or working, improving our skills of staff, or trying to work out what the direction of travel of AI is. This will help us build a kind of roadmap of the different things we want to achieve locally, and then we can move forward more strategically. Part 5 is just thinking about, and this is thinking about what our vision of what AI can do for us. We've already heard suggestions of how AI can redefine how we work, it's redefining how we live, but what in the context of our work, what's our vision for what this technology can do? And then finally, I'm just going to talk about 2 examples. They're a little bit anonymized, but they illustrate different ways of approaching AI from our perspective that could be useful in you thinking about how to tackle this issue of AI. So that's the plan. A lot of this is based on another resource which you can also access, which is a kind of bigger framework for responding to artificial intelligence strategically. It's also published, and there's also an article that you can read, a short article, which kind of explains the framework. And the slides for today are linked as well. And that's really just an outline of the whole framework, but we won't worry about that too much. And this is, again, part of that framework. It's a set of questions to basically ask yourself in order to develop this more strategic approach. It's about, how do we define AI? How does it impact the library? How do we fit in strategically to wider strategies? What are the drivers and barriers to the use of AI? What are our strengths and weaknesses? What are our AI capabilities? So there's some questions there to kind of evaluate our position, our strengths in relation to AI. And then what are our options? So in that part of the actual framework, we talk about some different sort of pathways that we might take AI. And then we talk about tactics. And then there's this future vision idea. So we're going to cover all these, the main points of this, but there is a bigger framework behind it that you can access, and it's for free for you to download. I thought a good place to start, and I don't know how confident you're feeling, it'd be good to hear a bit from you about who you are, who's here today. It'd be helpful for me to sort of like guide what I say. So I'll spend a little bit of time asking you, what kind of role have you got? What institution are you working at? And perhaps, what do you want to find out today? So maybe in the chat box, you can just type so I can see. Look behind is already, behind Kogali is all from King Saud University is already put in his contact details there as well. So just want to hear from anybody who's feeling brave, you know, what's your role, what's your institution, and what do you want to get out of this this session? Be really good to hear. So we're getting a few answers here. You probably see people you know, friends who are also on the call, and you better to talk to them maybe afterwards about what you've learned. So we've got a lot of information coming in here, so we're going to have to kind of scroll through and read as quickly as we can. We've got some librarians, some instructors, a head of a library, a professor of AI and EdTech. Well, perhaps you should be giving this talk, not me. Impressive stuff.
There is some answer in Arabic, so they said that they use it for the modern application parts. So I think there is many answers that fulfill the question.
Thank you. Yes. Yes. So feel free to answer in Arabic because I know most of you are going to understand that.
I'm fine. I am here just to work with you.
Thank you. Very much appreciated. So a teacher in university, someone doing research, professor. We've got quite a variety of people here. I'm definitely mostly focusing on the library perspective. So it's a librarian perspective, but I think many of the ideas could be picked up if you're in an academic department. So I hope that will be helpful. So there's someone, Heber is saying, well, I want to know about how to use AI to improve library services. And the ask is saying they want to meet the needs of beneficiaries. Yes. So how do we benefit users really through AI? That's really what libraries are all about. They're all about serving the user base, aren't they? So application of AI in libraries again. Remedios is saying that's what we want to find out. So I'll just let this run a little bit longer because it's quite nice for you to see who else is here and what they want to know.
Yes.
Yes, how AI will affect teaching methods with students, help during explaining lectures. So I will say something highly relevant to that because a lot of my work has been in the application of AI in learning context. So although I've got a library focus, I think a lot of it is highly relevant to anyone who's teaching students. University professor trying to get my students to understand what AI can do for them. So again, AI can do great things, but there's a lot of issues as well that we have to try and address. There's somebody asking about, will AI replace the workforce? Personally, I don't think so, but it's a concern, isn't it? How can libraries adapt to the advance of AI in the context of library instruction, like information literacy? That's definitely something I'm going to talk about because it seems like for educational institutions, AI is very much about generative AI. It's very much about the benefits of that, but also the problems that creates. How reliable is AI technology? Another very good question that I think information people are always asking, and what's the reliability of the answers I get out of AI? Does AI stand alone without help from the human? Well, it doesn't yet. It can do some very clever things very fast, but I don't think it's really something that could work without humans being there to evaluate it. So we've got a lot of questions and things we're interested in, and it's nice to hear a lot from you and we'll have the big chance to ask your questions specifically if I don't cover them at a later point. But I thought it was a great idea to let you have your say right at the beginning. As I say, I've shared my slide, so you should be able to see what's coming up. Let me move forward. So defining artificial intelligence. There've been, and the reason I think this is important is because it's kind of quite a complicated idea, quite a multiple technology. So some of these definitions, they could be useful, such as the ability of a computer system to solve problems and perform tasks that we normally expect to require human intelligence. That's a very common type of definition. Some of the other definitions are a bit variant on that, but that's the essence of a lot of these definitions. It doesn't really tell us that much, to be honest. So if we go to the next page, there's some more definitions. I quite like let's just go back one slide. The UNESCO one's quite nice because it's saying machines that imitate some features of human intelligence. So when a computer learns from a data set, it's not learning in the way you or I would do. It's a different process. I guess the learning is a metaphor. So I quite like the idea of it imitating some features of human intelligence. That's quite a good wording. And then the European Commission definition there at the bottom of the page is quite nice because it emphasizes that AI is based, the current AI anyway, is mostly based on data combined with algorithms. So you train up an algorithm, you collect a training set of data, you label it with sort of the right answers. The algorithm learns to identify the right answers for new items that it hasn't seen before. That's in essence what's happening. So data is very key. The reason why Google and Microsoft and so forth can have these powerful AI tools is because they have a lot of data, basically. But again, the algorithms only work on the basics of a sort of percentage reliability. They could be very reliable. In some cases, they're not 100% reliable. And that's probably pretty much the case a lot of the time. So what we're looking at is something that's right quite a lot, but also makes mistakes. And that's partly why I guess humans have to really be involved in this process. And the other interesting part of that European Commission definition is the importance of computing power. And that's something we'll come back to. But the definition I really like is this one on this page, because it gives a very strong sense of the different types of technology that could be called artificial intelligence. Now, I know there's some real experts on AI in this call, and I think they might not really like the term artificial intelligence. Is a bit vague. Machine learning is a particular type of technology, or neural networks or so. They're actual types of technology, whereas AI is a little bit of maybe a popular term. But it is one that we're working with and using all the time. And this definition is quite good because it gives us a sense of the different types of things it can do. It can do things a bit like perception. In other words, suppose we take a library collection, it can take in a lot of pictures and maybe identify certain features of those images, such as like a particular type of animal appears many times in those images. So it can do some processing of images. It can do some processing of text. So it could be a big corpus of literature that is allowing you to analyze at scale. It could be audio files. It could be oral histories that people have recorded about their lives, and it could present an analysis of those. So it's like taking in things that aren't in computer readable form and making them data that a computer can understand. So this kind of perception role of AI is quite important. Then there's decision making, like making a choice between different options. There's prediction, and prediction would have been a really important part of AI, perhaps in the past, and it's still potentially really important. For example, trying to predict how many students are going to come into the library on a particular day. Is it going to be crowded? You can probably predict that based on things like the weather, the time of year, and those kind of things. So the predictive power of AI was something that's very important in the past. Then there's automatic knowledge extraction and pattern recognition from data. So this is things like the example given there is of discovering fake news connections, but it could be something like sentiment analysis. So you could take a lot of text and discover positive and negative sentiment in that collection of comments, say. And then there's sort of logical reasoning as well. So it's a vast range of technologies. These definitions are very broad, and it doesn't even include what we would now probably think of as the most important form of AI, generative AI, that sort of actually writes text and creates images and writes code. That's not even in that definition. So AI is a very broad church of technologies. And I think that's useful to know, because that's why I think we get a bit confused when we start talking about AI, because it is such a wide range of things. And a lot of everyday things that we now think of as pretty ordinary, I would say, are artificial intelligence. You know, spam filtering, plagiarism detection, which, you know, a lot of universities use to look at student essays, to look for students might have copied text. Things like transcription and captioning, where it's done automatically, like Zoom has a function to automatically caption a video. Translation, this is like super powerful a tool that increasingly we can get real-time translation to speak to someone or translate text fairly accurately. Search and recommendation I think is a really important aspect and controversial part of AI. And even like the predictive text that starts to finish a sentence for us when we're writing an email. These are, I would say, part of the sort of umbrella, the family of AI technologies. So we can see that things that we're quite familiar with, really. They're almost day-to-day things that we take for granted. They're also a really important part of our information environment. So as librarians and information professionals, they're things we've thought about a lot. You know, things like the accuracy of recommendations in something like Amazon or Google. These things we've been talking about for a long time, about the problems. And then on the right-hand side, I put in some more sort of futuristic or developmental ways that AI is being used. And again, it's confusing, I think, because there's quite a variety of things going on here. So we've got enhancing library metadata. So a lot of big national libraries in particular, they're thinking about, they've got a lot of books coming in all the time, and something like generative AI help write metadata about a new book. It would save a lot of time. And I think generative AI is pretty good, but not perfect at doing it. So it can be a helper in that context. Some chatbots that we encounter on service websites are based on AI. And I think a few years ago, we would have been talking about library chatbots as a really important use of generative AI. And then, of course, there's generative AI being used in the search process, things like ChatGPT, but also maybe slightly better from an information perspective. Examples like Perplexity, which is like ChatGPT, but it's a bit more reliable in terms of the references it bases answers on. So we're using that in the search process. I'm sure many students are doing that already. We're also supporting data and AI literacy is obviously a very important role in the libraries have always had this role of training users to really do searches and understand the research results critically. And this is, again, a key thing that I think, particularly in the learning context, this is what we kind of mean by AI. We mean students using generative AI, staff using generative AI, trying to help them to do it effectively. That's really what a lot of the relevance of AI to libraries really is. But we can also, there's a proliferating range of tools that you will find bibliographic databases that we subscribe to. They're increasingly got AI built into them so that they'll do the same sort of summaries that generative AI can do. But also a wide range of other tools that will do some very interesting things. They'll do things like summarize text. They'll maybe do a consensus check. So one of them is called consensus. It sort of looks at, what's the balance of agreement across 10 academic texts? Is it, the X or Y is the case, or is it not the case? So it's starting to assist the researcher in analysing the literature. Of course, there's lots of problems with these tools in terms of should you be uploading PDFs to those? Is it probably a breach of copyright? What about your privacy? You shouldn't be uploading your data to them. But I know researchers are very interested in these kind of tools. They could help do analysis of qualitative or quantitative data. And then so supporting users to select the right tools seems to be quite an important role. And then it's contributing to institutional policy. I think there's the library has a role here too. So this is like some of the possible uses of libraries, of AI in libraries. And this is just a kind of longer list. We won't go perhaps into that. But of course, generative AI can be used in everyday office work, including, professional work. So if I'm doing marketing material or press releases for particular audiences, AI is great at sort of customizing text to a different audience or shortening it or lengthening it. It's great for summarizing. If I was planning a teaching session or an exhibition about any topic, I think I might turn to generative AI to give me some starting points, much easier than a blank sheet of paper. It's good, probably a starting point for if you get a reference query in the library, someone comes in and asks a complicated question. Maybe it's a good starting point. I wouldn't want it to be the end. But translation, obviously, maybe creating an infographic or drafting metadata. So there's lots of possible uses of generative AI in the library. And I thought I've been talking a bit too much as it is. Here's a good point to pause again and give you guys a chance to perhaps give some examples of how you're using generative AI. I'm guessing a lot of you are. How are you finding it useful? So again, I'll pause and let you sort of put in the chat box anything about what do you think is a good use of generative AI? Can you think of an example? And again, it's fine to summarize a report. Solomon said, yeah, excellent. example, is really good at summarizing or even looking within a text for particular types of material. Suppose you want to just know about the methodology of a paper, or you just want something like that. I think that's a really useful use of generative AI.
There is some in Arabic about the marketing for products. Also, there is a big paragraph saying that we're still afraid about this bias or fraud of the information provided by the AI. So I think this is a big part of your presentation, Andrew, I guess.
Yes, good point.
Yeah.
So we're using it. I'm not saying we're not using it with some caution. So we'll come to the reason to be cautious in a moment. But the excellent example, I think marketing, if I was doing marketing material, I think that I would definitely turn to AI to help me, as long as it's not the end, writing the end product. Interesting that someone's Remedios is saying that their department's working on a policy.
Human resources as well.
What is the example in human resources?
He didn't mention
Okay.
He said that this is a branch that I'm sure that about something, the big data and how to manipulate the huge data for the hundreds or thousand of staff. So I think he could play a big role in that.
Yes. And Nasra's mentioning there some good ideas for teaching activities. I think that's a great idea. It's like you're teaching a particular topic, you're thinking, how do I make this a bit more interactive? How do I make it a bit more fun? AI just spouts loads of ideas. Probably most of them you wouldn't want to use, but just a few might go, yeah, that's a good starting point for an idea. So I think it's very good actually for supporting kind of our own creative processes. It's just we don't want to end with whatever it suggests.
Yeah. Also here suggesting references for specific research topic.
I know a lot of students use it for things like they've been given an assignment, they don't understand some of the technical terms quite as well as they perhaps should, and they just like translate that, or they've gone to a lecture and they didn't understand the terms. Again, AI can help give a simple explanation, a few explanations of topic. So I think there's lots of ways we can use it, but let's move on to some problems. And there's quite a few. These aren't inherent to AI as such. They're more to do with systems like ChatGPT that have been designed in a particular way that's commercial and perhaps a little bit suspect in some ways. So it definitely will hallucinate information, which could be wrong. It can fabricate citations. We know that. I'm sure we're all aware of that. And of course, it's quite hard to cite something like ChatGPT because every time you ask, it gives a different answer. So it hasn't got a static output. You can say, oh, this is where I got my information from. So that's already sort of undermining how we think of information working. We think of information as an unbroken line of evidence to some facts we want to state. But it's just throwing out something that could be accurate, but it's hard to check and it could be quite inaccurate. Also, there's more sinisterly, perhaps, some quite deep biases in these systems that they will make kind of stereotyped assumptions. The example that everyone usually gives is if you type into one of these image generators, you say, show me a doctor, they'll always show you a man. If you ask for a nurse, they'll always show you a woman. And this is just reinforcing stereotypes, I suppose. There's a very good study that shows across many different professions how there's a very big gendered assumption. And that's not, you could say, well, that's not really That reflects the biases in the data that ChatGPT has been trained on, and that's the biases in wider society. But in many ways, we want to correct those biases. So them being hidden in the data is like problematic. Another issue is privacy. Many companies, sort of, particularly at the beginning, were blocking sites like ChatGPT because they were fearing loss of confidential data. So if you work in the corporate sector, I'm pretty sure you wouldn't be putting in your own data, even your personal data or the data of the company, into ChatGPT. You would be very careful about that. So great to summarize things, but if you're concerned about the intellectual property rights there, you might be a bit cautious. There's also these sort of quite dangerous effects on, which has already been mentioned, of like potentially certain jobs disappearing. And for example, there was a sort of petition very recently by authors and creative artists saying that AI basically stolen their stuff off the internet, and now it was replacing them, and many people in that sector losing jobs. I don't think it works in the information sector that we're under threat, or the education sector, but I do think the way that sites like ChatGPT and these image generators have been created is kind of it's a violation of copyright most of the time, and it does threaten people's jobs. Then there's the question, particularly in the education context, of equality. So normally when an institution buys some software, it's available to all students, right? All staff. But when you've got something like ChatGPT, some people can subscribe to the better version of it, and those with less money can not afford to do so. So it's putting people at a bit of a disadvantage that we don't like to see in the educational context. There's also some questionable ways that ChatGPT in particular was developed, and we know there's a big environmental impact. The amount of GPT models do a lot of processing, particularly image generation, and that means generate a lot of heat, they use a lot of power, a lot of water is used in cooling these systems. So we know that both Microsoft and Google have already said in the last few months that they're not reaching their carbon emission targets because of AI investment. So as well, there's a lot of kind of complicated problems there. Some are to do with AI itself, and some are really to do with how it's being developed in this particular context. There's something that we, in terms of critical thinking about information, there's a real challenge here, but also an opportunity, in the sense that I think everybody uses these tools, realizes there's inaccuracies. It's our opportunity to sort of open up a conversation about how to critically evaluate information sources much better. But we can also raise these deeper, wider issues about intellectual property rights, about effects on society, effects on the global environment as well. So I think there's a really interesting debate to be had here with students, with colleagues, to make sure that critical information literacy is part of what everyone understands. And the reason why I put the UNESCO recommendation on the ethics of artificial intelligence on that slide is because I think it's a really good reference source to look up something about these issues. It's really good, even though it was only published in 2019 before generative AI. I think it raises all the key issues about how AI can affect the wider world as well as the immediate sort of information environment. We've come up with a bit of a model of generative AI literacy that you might find useful, so we published a paper on it. But you may also have seen UNESCO's new competency framework. It's published in the last couple of weeks. I would recommend looking at that for thoughts on what AI literacy looks like. And I think probably a lot of you are thinking the core of how a library responds to AI, particularly generative AI, is going to be around how we teach users to use these tools safely and critically. And I think these are good reference points for that. So I will point you at those models. I won't talk all the way through. I will mention one thing in this model of ours, and that's the item 3, because as well as the reliability of the information we get from generative AI, a lot of students talk about AI as generative AI as making them more efficient. So what they mean is, oh, save me time checking my essay, save me time reading that article, I can just get a summary. That's great, and that could increase their learning, but it might equally reduce their learning. It can have a bad effect in terms of they're losing exactly the skills that we want them to learn in education. They're losing the skill in like summarizing a text or writing themselves. So that number 3, reflective understanding, is really wanting us to promote the idea we've got to think about the effects of AI on ourselves. And a lot of students do express the fear that they're becoming technologically dependent, and that could happen with AI. So now we've come to the point where we've got a little bit of a vote. So again, a little bit of interaction, your chance to participate. So I've got a poll here, so I can launch poll. So what you should be seeing on your screen, I think, is asking you, oh, this doesn't seem to be the right poll. Hang on. Ah, yes. Sorry, I launched the wrong poll. And someone help me here. I think I might have. I know what I need to do. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Sorry about that. That was my mistake.
That's nice.
You should see the right poll now. So what I'm trying to ask you is really what kind of AI you think is most important? What kind of uses are most important to you? Is it using AI to improve the collection description? Is it your own use of generative AI? Is it supporting users to select the best tools? Is it creating a library chatbot? That was a big. Is it about creating a community for data analysts? I haven't talked much about that, but I do think that's a possible role for libraries, is that more and more scholars are using AI type analysis. Digital humanists, scientists, computational social scientists, they're all using AI in their research. So should the library be a place where you can build community around that? And then what about teaching? I've put it worded it slightly strangely. Is it about adding data and algorithmic literacy into information literacy training? Which do you? So we're getting quite a lot of answers. A lot of people have answered already. It's very good. I'll wait a little bit longer because already a third of people have participated, and then I can end the poll and you'll be able to see the answer, which is very, very interesting.
think the first two types or kinds is taking the majority,
Yes.
which is expected, by the way, according to the persona of the attendees.
Possibly, although I would have expected the last one to be the most popular.
Yeah.
Perhaps it's my wording of folding is a bit confusing. I just meant, are we going to teach people about AI literacy? So we've already had a lot of people voted. That's excellent. It's just still people voting. So maybe just go through the options again. So is it about improving the description of our collections? Is it using generative AI for things like summarizing and drafting text, which we've just been talking about? Is it helping users select the right tools from that proliferation of generative AI tools that are out there? Is it creating a library chatbot? Maybe. Is it this community of data scientists I was talking about? Or is it about, I've worded it strangely, is it about information literacy, really? Is that how we're going to interpret it? So a lot of people have participated. It seems to have slowed down. So perhaps I will end the poll and you should share the results. So you should be able to see the results now, I think.
It appears, yes.
Mohammed is saying, well, the poll should have other options too. And I tend to agree. You know, you can't have too many options, but yeah, I probably should have had other options. So that's very interesting. I find that slightly surprising, but it's interesting insight into how people in this audience are thinking about using AI. So let's go back. Okay, so we need to move on. I'm aware that I sort of waffle a bit, so let's move on quickly to some of the other thoughts we have about thinking more strategically. We've got a clear idea of what AI is about, I guess. So this slide is highly irrelevant to you. It's about the UK context, but I thought it was a good example of all the different policies there are out there. So there's like a national policy, there's a policy for the funders of research in the UK, there's a group of big universities have got a kind of AI principles statement, and my own university's got a statement. There's many, many policies out there. And in a way, one of the points I want to make really is you need to look in your own context and think, what are the policies we need to fit in with? Can we contribute to the national AI push, which I'm sure you can? Libraries are really important, building skills, building a data infrastructure and so forth. Can you contribute to your university policy, or what the university is saying, or a department is saying? So thinking, what is the strategic priority like? I think I'll quickly go to one of these sort of policy statements. It's very, very interesting, which is the Association of Research Libraries Guiding Principles from a few months ago. It's an American institution, but I think it says some very interesting things. I won't go through all of it because there isn't time, but I think if you've got time, go through it and read it. And what it strikes me as is basically saying all the things that libraries stand for are reaffirmed as relevant in the AI world. And we've got to stand up for those principles. So, for example, libraries democratize access to artificial intelligence tools and technology to foster digital literacy. This principle underscores the library's commitment to inclusivity, knowledge dissemination, and the empowerment of individuals. It's really just saying what libraries always say. We want people to have access to information. It doesn't matter who they are, they should have access. And AI tools are part of that picture. Second principle, libraries commit to understanding where distortions and biases are present. So it's about finding out more about what's going wrong in terms of the information that AI generates. Libraries champion transparency and information integrity. These are fundamental principles that we always talk about. They're very interesting, and I think if you look across all the principles, they're basically a reassertion of things that libraries stand for. And there's a really nice one here. Number 4 is a little bit unique, though. It says, libraries believe no human, no AI. So it's asserting like a human-centric idea that, there's always got to be human in the mix somewhere, and we can see it pretty clearly with generative AI. I wouldn't rely on generative AI to do my marketing for me, write my marketing material for me. I would certainly rely on it to come up with some ideas, but I wouldn't rely on it. So humans need to be in the mix. And then there's some more principles, but I won't go through all of them. And then there's another set of principles, which is the Russell Group of universities in the UK. It's just saying some basic things, very simple things about what they think the landscape around AI should be. I'm not holding this up as what we should all say. We might disagree with some parts of it, particularly if we don't work in the learning sector. But I think it's a good idea to think about, well, what principles should we be asserting here? And in many ways, I think it's just going to be the principles that we've always asserted, access to information, critical reading of information, information integrity. It's kind of what libraries stand for. So, and universities stand for learning, and really we're asserting that, AI, students should become AI literate, staff should become AI literate. So I think those sort of thinking about the wider principles is quite useful. So that's just a prompt to think about, I think quite a lot of the time we think about our own little world of the work we do. We don't think widely enough about what's going on beyond us and how we can contribute. But I think generative AI in particular, because of its problems around information reliability, is a really good opportunity for us to dive in and sort of say things and contribute to the debate. I'm just going to quickly go over a couple of tools. They're very familiar tools from strategy theory, which you probably studied before. But I think they're quite useful to kind of apply to the case of AI. Force field analysis. Force field analysis is basically where you look at what are the positive forces making for change. You also look at the restraining forces. What are the barriers? And what you typically do is you draw the arrows the size of the strength of any particular force, and then it helps you sort of weigh up, what's really driving the situation forward, what's preventing us progressing, and we can kind of see what's likely to happen as a result and try and influence. The way I thought we could look at this was again turn to one of our polls. So here we can sort of say, well, what are the drivers? So if I launch another poll, I think you should be able to see the poll now. Yes. So I think there's quite a sort of different drivers. Is it for increased productivity? Is AI really for the automation of routine tasks? I haven't really mentioned much about that. But I think AI is very good at doing things like grabbing a load of data, processing it, and then firing off things it's decided about, how the data should be structured or used, putting it into different spreadsheets. I think a lot of times maybe that's where AI, and it works well on scale. So maybe it's these routine tasks in the background of, you know, managing records in our catalog or something, you know, for example, looking at the quality of our catalog records or the quality of images in our image database. Maybe it's the automation of those kind of routine tasks is really what AI is about. Or is it about increased personalization and adaptivity? And that's often the promise in the learning context. And you can see to some extent with ChatGPT, you can say, well, it's helping you personalize learning by sort of giving you a tool that can ask questions about sort of something you've learned and give you answers back in the form you wanted because you've set up the parameters of the question. And that's a big promise of AI is personalization and adaptivity. Is it about increased access to knowledge for all? Is that really what AI promises? And I think if you look across the range of these things I've talked about in terms of AI, like translation, like describing library collections better, isn't that really what AI is about? Some people might say it's about digital transformation. AI is part of digital transformation. Is it public need for AI literacy? Is that a key driver? Again, I think often libraries, we're particularly talking to the library audience here, it's the need for AI literacy that drives them. And then I also put in supporting creativity. A lot of people say AI isn't creative, but I do think things like brainstorming and coming up with ideas, it's actually quite good as a tool to prompt you with when you've got a blank piece of paper in front of you or a blank screen in front of you. It just gives you a starting point. Maybe it's human creativity that drives it. It does support creativity in a way. So again, we're getting a lot of good answers in here. We'll just wait a little bit longer and let people to decide what they want to vote for. Just wait a little bit longer. Looks like most people are going to vote. So let's share the results. So you should see on the screen the results. People are saying, well, increased productivity. So I suppose they're imagining, oh, well, I can do my job quicker because I'm using AI to speed up certain process and write my document quicker because of that. Increased access to knowledge for all seem to come out really important. Automation of tasks. So those, we've got a little bit of a picture of the drivers there, and we'll share the results later. But then there's also some barriers. So let's also see what you think are the barriers, because I think this is something that really we talk about a lot. So again, I'll go through them as you're able to choose. So is it about the lack of skills that we have as a workforce? Or is it number 6, which is more about our fear about maybe we've got the skills. I think we might have the skills. We're just a bit more tentative and worried to push ourselves forward. Is it resource question? Is it the cost of commercial systems that is really the barrier? Is the real challenge for us the speed of change? I know in my institution, we work slowly. Academic institutions change slowly, they adapt slowly. The speed of change of something like ChatGPT appearing, and then it's evolved in multiple ways over time very rapidly. How do we make sense of that and adjust what we do? Even trying to explain to students how AI works, well, it changes so quickly, it's quite hard to get a handle on it ourselves. And then there's the ethical issue, there's the privacy issue, put that as 4. 7, the digital divide. In other words, those with skill and digital skills and digital access are going to have a big advantage. It's making the divisions in society and education bigger. Is it bias? That's commonly seen as one of the key problems. Is it about IT services owning the agenda? Is it about us just having more important priorities? So one of the options is, there are more important priorities or solutions. A common argument against AI is, well, it's a rather overcomplicated technology when actually you can solve the problem you've got with something a lot simpler. That's a very common argument actually here in workplaces. And then 10, I put 10 in there, is the lack of IT development capacity. I don't know about Saudi Arabia, but in the UK, very few university libraries, for example, have any development capacity. They don't develop systems. There's a lot of open source software out there that they could use, but they don't really have the capacity to use it. So again, we've got some results, still people voting because there's quite a lot of options there. Let's see. At the moment, it's looking like our lack of skills is an important issue. The cost of systems, the ethical issues, particularly the privacy issues that come out as quite important here. That's really interesting. I'll just give you a few moments more to just think through your answers because I don't want to sort of rush you. Okay. So I know there are people still wanting to vote, so it's a bit irritating for me to stop things, but I'm going to end the poll there and share the results. So you should be able to see on the screen the results. And you can see that I think we feel that it's our lack of skills is the problem. It's the cost of these AI solutions, of the speed of their change. Data quality issues is something I didn't actually say anything about. It's like, okay, AI uses data. If you can got lots of data, you can train AI to do really well. If your data's a mess, you probably can't. And then there's ethical issues. The fact that this is probably deepening the divide between the digital haves and the digital have-nots. And that's one of our concerns. That's really important that we sort of recognize that issue. So let's stop sharing. Stop sharing and just turn to our slides. I think I'll skip over the AI capabilities because I don't want to overrun. You can look at this in your own time, but I think it's another model of, well, what makes an AI capable organization. This is a model you can look at your own organization to think, have we got AI capability? So it's I think it's a nice little tool. But what I wanted to really give some emphasis to is this part. So when we're talking about being a bit more strategic, what we want to think about is across our whole information library service, or indeed an educational learning department, what are the things we can do that are under our control to get a kind of handle on AI. I've divided them into 4. You might not divide them in exactly the same way. One is workforce development tactics. So that's like recruiting new staff, not always easy to do, but upskilling existing staff. But there's various methods for doing that. People have tried things like reading groups or joining a MOOC on AI as a group and then discussing it, or just encouraging individuals to experiment with AI. So there's probably a lot of different tactics we could take to develop our workforce. Organizational tactics are more things like to do with, well, should we appoint someone to coordinate our AI activity? Should we have a task and finish group or a working group? Should we be trying to write a set of AI principles like those research libraries ones, and sort of say how we view AI as a whole? Should we be doing some sort of proof of concept project? And I don't necessarily mean an IT project. It could be something as simple as like a public exhibition of, say, the research being done in the institution about AI, bring together a number of researchers and put together like an exhibition, or a book display about the latest books you've got about AI. But it could be a project, or it could be a training course you could develop. Then there's the information gathering tactics. This is more sort of passive, I suppose. It's like trying to work out what's happening across the world in terms of AI, but also looking at sector best practice, talking to other institutions about it. And then there's what I've called the alignment tactics. And this is mostly about collaboration. Is it about collaboration within the institution? Is it so I know my library, they're working very closely with academic skills colleagues. They're working very closely with the disability support unit, anybody who teaches people about academic writing. So it could also be with researchers. So their library is also offering their data to researchers to do AI-based research. They're also working with students, of course, but in a very collaborative way. And then there's collaborating with other institutions, other libraries, other types of organization. And then we have to think about what are our collaborations like, and what does the library bring to those collaborations? I think it brings a lot. It can bring data, it can bring knowledge, data in the form of sort of collections of information, can bring knowledge, skills in training staff, a sort of orientation towards helping users and understanding how users work. So I think this is like my kind of map of maybe the potential tactics we've got in our sort of locker. And again, I think I'll go back to so I think I managed to relaunch the poll, which is about tactics. So again, let's hear what you think about the key tactics that you can really deploy to take control of this AI agenda. So do you think forming a working group is the best thing? Do you think publishing a set of AI principles would be a good idea? If that's the case, who's going to get together to write those principles? Is it the library itself? Who in the library? Or who outside the library could come in and write some principles together? Is it one of these proof of concept projects I was talking about? Is it about talking to suppliers? So I didn't really mention an external organization that's quite important as suppliers of bibliographic databases and so building AI into their tools increasingly. Other units in the organization. Is it, and another thing I didn't mention, researching changing user behavior. You can see a lot of people voting for that. So that's another sort of information gathering activity. Shouldn't we just be looking to see how our users are building into their search journeys generative AI alongside Google, alongside library databases?
I like this, by the way. I voted for it.
Yes.
It's interesting. Yes.
Yes, I think that, you mean investigating user behavior. Yes.
Yes,
I mean,
absolutely.
yeah, I totally agree, because I think what we as a profession know about was about what users want and do. So we should really be getting in there. And I have heard some quite good research about how generative AI fits into the search process.
That's very vital.
So we're getting some good results. Quite a few of you have voted. We'll just let other people vote a little bit longer. I'm aware of the time. I'm gonna have to. We wanted some time for questions, really, don't we? So
It's fine. I can tell that our owner participant just getting increased. So
okay.
take your time. Take your time. I think they are enjoying this webinar. It's very informative, me, myself. So that's good. So we can make an exception for this time because I think it's full of information, this one.
Okay, cool.
Perfect.
So we've still got a few people voting on that particular. I think it's very interesting to think about, well, what should we be doing? There's a big wide range of what I've called tactics here. I'm not saying only do one or two of them. Probably what we want to think about is how do we fit doing all of these things, but in a kind of roadmap over time. So let me just end the poll there and share the results. So you should be seeing on the screen the results. So a lot of people are saying, well, formal working group, I think that's a very common pattern, I know in the UK, bring together people from across the library because they've got very different experiences of what the issue is. If you're working with students, it's really about informing them not to cheat, I suppose. If it's working with staff, it's helping them to use the best tools to build generative AI into their service. But it could be office staff, they're really using it a lot for like generating marketing materials. It could be the technical staff, they want to use it for processing data. AI is being used in so many ways. Publishing a set of AI principles seems like a popular idea. I think it would get the library's sort of stamp on the area and kind of bring attention to the library as a place to come for advice on AI. Researching changing user behaviour has come up. So I think we agree that's a really useful and important one. Finding other units in the organisation to collaborate with. That seems very important to me. I don't think the library is going to work on its own here. We're going to be teaching students, but that means working with lecturers. It means working with other support units. It means working with researchers, but it also means working with maybe the academic integrity office. So there's lots of connections we have to make within the organisation and outside the organisation. So, yeah, that's just asking you about the tactics you might adopt. Here, I've just kind of put some examples into a kind of roadmap. So by looking at the tactics and seeing what order they should happen in, we can build kind of plan over, say, a few months or even a year or over a few years of how we're going to respond to AI. So it's just like an example of what it could be like. And I just started to note down a few skills I thought you might need to do work in this area. And the point I'm really trying to make here is, yeah, you need to know about AI, but a lot of the things we're talking about are more about very familiar things we do, training staff, planning our organisation, gathering information, researching what users do. So a lot of the skills needed are just the skills that we would use in running a library all the time or an information service all the time. I wanted to give you a chance to talk about your vision of what a library or information service powered by AI looks like. Sorry, I didn't stop sharing that properly. So, well, perhaps there isn't time for this. I think it'd be better to go to the next thing. But it's just to sort of say, I think it's good to have an idea of what what your idea of what the library should look like. So I think a lot of people I've talked to, what their vision of an AI-powered library is really just an automated library where humans only need to do the things that humans are good at, the human-centric tasks of talking to other people, whereas a lot of things are automated. Maybe that's our vision for how AI can help us. Another vision is like the living systematic review. So that's where our literature review is constantly updated by AI, is constantly filtering through new publications. And if you work in something like the health field, you'll know that the amount of publications out there is so vast. We need some help sort of filtering that. So those are kind of visions. But let's just move on quickly to what I call case studies, but they're really just like high-level summaries of libraries, and they're sort of like generic, combining different libraries together into sort of typical cases. And I think what they're supposed to illustrate is different strategies, really. On the one hand is library one. This library one is the sort of the very bold strategy. It's seeking to have a kind of leadership role within your organization through AI. And that means getting in early, talking about AI a lot, leading different working groups, leading working groups around AI and learning, AI and research, AI and administration too. I was involved in all these things. It implies quite a high resource, high commitment approach to AI. And that is something I know some libraries have tried to do. They're trying to be a leading light within their institutions about what AI is, trying to define it. Library two is a much more cautious approach. It's basically saying, well, we're gonna see AI as basically generative AI training, and we're going to build that into what we already teach in terms of information literacy and academic skills. We're just going to add in some stuff about generative AI. We're going to realize that the technology is rapidly changing. We can't really keep totally on top of it. We're going to do these detailed studies of how user behavior is changing so that we can really get a sense of where we should position ourselves. We should collaborate with central units, I put such as sort of, say the IT service, but also if you've got staff who teach staff to teach better, those kind of people. And we're going to carefully manage expectation. And this is kind of the cautious, lower risk and low resource approach. So I think those two case studies, they're not exactly detailed case studies, but they give you a sense of the options, I think, for libraries. I think what could determine which approach we take is something to do with our attitude to risk, something to do with our status as a library, the importance of the library to the institution, but also our sense of our own identity. I think with Library One, we're seeing ourselves as leaders, we're defining the field. In the other example, we're sort of staying within traditional library boundaries very much. The other two key drivers are probably resource implications. So Library One is an example of expending a huge amount of resource on this. Library Two is much more cautious, is a much safer approach. Library One, and then the strength of demand. Is there really a very strong demand within the institution for some sort of response? And where we think AI has become critical to how the organization works, perhaps they're part of digital transformation, then that strength of demand justifies the Library One approach. But the Library Two approach feels much more where demand is a bit more muted. That is, the need for support is perhaps less. Maybe academic departments themselves or the IT service or other groups are making stronger statements about AI. So I apologize for talking too much. I seem to have used up all the time just talking, but I'm very happy to go on answering questions for as long as people want to stay and ask questions, or you give your opinions. I mean, it's not all about, you know, I'm not trying to say I've got all the answers. I'd love to hear your opinions, particularly if they disagree with mine. It's great.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank you so much, Andrew, for this very informative and outstanding presentation. And I used to say that the most successful presentation, that presentation created questions more than giving answer, and yours is one of them. We know very well the journey with AI is just in the beginning. I feel that. And this webinar and the other similar webinars we provided through Naseej Academy, and sure for this strategic partnership with Royal Commission of Jubail and Yambo is a key to strengthen and the awareness of AI, and this will shape the future of it for sure. Again, I confirming my gratitude for you, Andrew, and for sure for the presence of Dr. Shakir Rida as a representative for the Commission, the Royal Commission. And I will not take too much time, and let's jump directly to the question. And I did the incredible role of classifying the question and try to communicate it to you to have a telegraphic answer, because I found that there is still many audience with us with this question, so I try to do that. The first question I received from our attendees, Mr. Sulaiman al-Muthiri, and he said that, and he asked, what would happen to the resources or information that we feed to the AI? I think he's thinking that about regardless the platform or speciality. So he need to understand that what's happening for the resources we feed the AI with. Please, Andrew.
Yeah, so if we're talking about something like ChatGPT, they say that they're not, I think they're using any data we input to train their model. If it's copyright material, we shouldn't probably be uploading it in that context. But that's not to say all AI is like that. There's this model that's emerging called RAG, which is resource augmented generation, which basically means you've got the interface of ChatGPT and it's got a very clever way of communicating, but you can feed it with resources that you trust, and that can result in much more reliable answers. So if we can control the production of AI, we don't have to fall into all these traps that ChatGPT has fallen into.
Perfect. Thank you for this very clear. And let's move to the old question that keep back, especially with technology and with focusing on AI. Will the AI substitute the human in some fields, for example, in library field?
I don't think it's particularly likely. It seems to me that it's generated more work for people like librarians who are there to help people find information effectively. I can't see it. I mean, there's areas like it can help with cataloging by sort of semi-guessing quite well some of the fields that you might put in a MARC record. So I think it could increase the productivity of catalogers. I guess if you increase productivity, potentially you could reduce the number of people being employed. That is a risk. The other risk is, so I think it might have effect on work, but I think it'll take a long time and there'll be a lot of shift maybe it will make it possible to spend more time on more interesting things. I feel hopeful. There's definitely certain people in the creative industries who feel very threatened by it.
Okay. Good. Thank you for this answer. Also, we have a bunch of questions around how reliable the AI technology is. Also, what is the pros and cons, mainly the cons for the AI in the academia? Also, Mr. Abdullah Al-Qahtani say that does AI reduce the education productivity? So you know the how those just running around the same concept about the if we can say the black shadow or the black side of the AI, mainly in the academia.
Yeah, so take two examples, like a student writing an essay. I think there's a lot of help that student could get. They can help define the question. They can get some ideas of how to structure an answer. They can get some help with summarizing some of the text. They can get help proofreading their essay. I don't think those things are bad, but there's some dangers if they become dependent on the technology or if they use the technology in an inappropriate way. Like if the task was to summarize a text, they shouldn't use it to do that. So it's making a shortcut, and maybe you're losing some learning by doing that. So there's some risk. Another example of a task is maybe a researcher, they've got some data from interviews or something, and they want to analyze it. I don't see why, if they found a safe generative AI tool, that it couldn't help them. It could have some thoughts about, some themes emerging from their data. But I wouldn't imagine it would substitute for doing it yourself pretty thoroughly. It's not going to save you that much time in that context. And of course, if those interviews are kind of confidential interviews, you wouldn't want to put them into most generative AI tools. You're basically violating their privacy, I think. So it can be helpful, but I think
There's some.
the human has got to be in control. We've got to take responsibility for our use. We've got to help people see what the hidden problems are, things like the bias that aren't as obvious an issue. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Another question from Yasmina Maruf. She said that how does artificial intelligence contribute to archival practice? I think she read very well your resume and your minor and major. So she need to understand how the artificial intelligence contributing to archival practice.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. I haven't said much about that. I think AI could be very powerful. So I know things like Europeana, which is a big sort of database of European images and stuff. They've used it a lot for things like going through a very, very collection of pictures that could be archival and finding the ones that are duplicated, finding the ones that aren't very high quality, finding the missing metadata. Those kind of routine processes they could do at a huge scale with digital collections seems to be super powerful. And also, I mean, potentially, it could also do, suppose you've got a collection of videos or something.
Yeah.
We can't add metadata to all those videos, but maybe we can get a transcript which is rough and ready, but it's good enough for it to help us search. So I think it's got a very powerful, in the context of born digital or digitized archival collections, it's got some very powerful uses.
Perfect. I think related to that on the same field of the documentation and archive, Uthman bin Hamou He's asking about are there ongoing research projects related to retrieving or generating the lost manuscripts through AI?
Yeah, so there's that very
This one, I
interesting.
guess.
Yeah, it's a very interesting subject, isn't it? Yeah. So I don't know if you know about those scrolls of early texts that were written by the Romans in the Roman Empire. They were burnt in the Great Vesuvius eruption. They've been working for many years to try and work out what the text is. And I believe they have had some success with, where's it AI? I don't know, but it's like different forms of looking at images. So I think in archaeological context, it probably does have some very exciting potential to retrieve things that are lost. That would be fantastic, wouldn't it?
Perfect question, and I think very informative answer. How to evaluate and measure the competences and strategies within artificial intelligence? I think maybe this is a question just seeking for more elaboration about the competences within the organization and how to use the AI as an effective tool to measure these competences for the staff. The libraries or in the other organization. Yes, Andrew?
Yes, so that model I talked about in terms of AI capability sort of said you need technical skills, but you also need business skills. So you need to be able to deliver on a project in time because, you know, if you've got an AI project, you need to just manage it as well. You need to influence other people. You need to run good working groups. You need to gather information effectively. I would emphasize, yeah, you need to know about AI. I don't think any of ours in the library world need to become, you know, data scientists or AI engineers or something. We're more in the area of like defining what is needed. So AI those kind of people are very good at delivering project to requirements, but the question is, what are the requirements? And that's where I think you go back to what you emphasized, like finding out what users actually need and then what their behavior is. If we know that, we can design systems, we can ask for a system that will deliver what our users really need. Whereas AI companies often come to us with solutions that are just crazy. They don't really understand the library world and information world. I've heard of one company that sort of offered a solution which basically you could give it the answer you wanted and it would find evidence to prove your point. They thought that was a good solution. But if you think about it, that's exactly the opposite. It's not what you should be doing. You should be finding out what the answer is. Not just deciding what you want the answer to be and just it finds data for you. So that shows a fundamental misunderstanding of the nature of information. And I think that's where we're always going to be important.
Yeah. Thank you. And we have a flow of questions. So let's move to another one, and it's takes us back to the human AI interaction. From your opinion, do you think that AI affect negatively on the creativity of the human, or this stimulating this one? I will keep my answer for myself, and we'll see what you will say.
Oh, yeah, I'd be interested to hear what you think. I think it's a support, potentially.
Agree with you. Go ahead.
You know, because, you know, with a blank sheet of paper, I can't think of, I don't know, how to teach my class to make it more interesting. It might come up with 30 ideas. It can churn out 100 ideas. And one of those might be the kernel of something that I would really want to work with that fits in with my way of teaching and my subject. So I think it's helpful. What do you think? I would like to.
Yeah. I think it took the human being to a fourth or fifth dimension of thinking. For sure, there is some routine role or jobs that for sure will be substituted, like X-ray specialist, for example, something like that. But at the same time, I think it's creating what we can say that a new dimension of think about things. So you can have million of new faces, which is copyright free. So you can generate new then. So even that thinking about your own specialty or the field that you are interested in, I think it gives a different angle of looking at it because you have a new tool that you don't expect what will provide you with. So I think it will open the horizon for more creativity for the human. Doing the routine things will be something part of the daily life. You will think about this. And even in our field in library science, I think it will give more time for the librarian to get closer to the users and understand their needs more. So they will not think more about the classification or this technical. I don't know, this is a personal impression, so I try to share it with you. Okay.
I like that because I think
Yes,
in
please.
a way we think of AI as like trying to imitate our thinking, but it could think in completely different ways.
Yeah.
And the conversation with it is going to be fantastic. It's going to say very different things. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, another question in the same scope of the same. How can the organization and for sure universities assess their current AI capabilities before developing a strategic plan? I think this is something essential, the prerequisite, if you can put the spotlight on it a little bit, Andrew.
Yeah, so in that wider toolkit I talked about, there's some stuff about the SWOT analysis, there's some stuff about this capability model. I really like the capability model. I think it gets, so for example, it talks about you need resources, you need technical resources, you need lots of data. I think one of the things that universities will find is, yeah, we've got lots of data, but it's not really in any sort of order. You know, if you think about all the data we generate as institutions is vast, but is it in any way usable for AI? Probably not. So there's a lot of work to do around data strategies, probably. And the capability model also talks about the human side, but also talks about things that are less obvious, like it calls them intangible resources. It talks about the willingness to take risk, for example, as part. And if you think about these organizations, they don't want to take a risk. And have you got the power to coordinate? So a lot of work was done around learning analytics. It seemed to me to show learning analytics had a lot of potential, but institutions would have to make such a fundamental change to how they work to leverage that they didn't do it. So actually it needs very powerful leadership to change an organization. And AI really demands big changes. So you could say, what's the power structure like in the organization? That can it respond to the demands of AI?
Perfect. Thank you. I know the time is running so fast, and we're trying. I know we exceed that time, but actually, based on the feedback from the audience, they need to have more information in this regard. But let's take the last two main questions that including many reflections from your side. The one is the economic factor related to adopting the AI technology with all the application that you need. So do you think that it's getting down so it will be available for all organization and academia?
I think that's where there's a trade-off between in-house technical skills, because there's lots of open source solutions that you can
Yes,
get off the shelf, but you
absolutely.
need the technological knowledge.
Mhm.
Most institutions, most libraries don't have that. Maybe some institutions do. So what we've done in the UK, for example, is I think we've gone down the route of we just buy the systems in. But that means they're hugely expensive because we're not developing them, we're not adjusting them, we haven't got that much control over them. So I think the prices will come down because they always do. So it will become more affordable. But it's a shame that we haven't got more development capacity in our institution. But that's because libraries as a sector, maybe universities as a whole, are a little bit underfunded, aren't they? Let's be honest. They're historically underfunded. If we had more resources, we could do so much more.
Perfect. I'm totally agree with you, especially that we have other previous technology that's starting very expensive, and by the time, and as you know, the market rule that the more that you will have application and widening the market, the more that you will have reducing of the cost. So then, now let's go to the last question, which is how do you predict the future of AI after about, I will not say 10 years, no, just 3 to 5 years, because I know that there is jumping will happen within these 3 or 5 years. How do you see it, Andrew?
Oh, that's a very difficult question, isn't it? Hopefully, if we're feeling positive, we'd say the sustainability and environmental impact of AI, they get under control. Also, the sort of more excessive commercial tendencies of they're a bit exploitative. Things like the European AI Act. I mean, neither of our countries are in the European Union, but it will have a big impact of making these suppliers much more transparent and fairer and less exploitative. I think that could benefit everybody. So we're going to have a positive path where, you know, more and more technology, and then maybe we get your vision of like technologies that aren't pretending to be human. They're something different. They think in different ways, and that could be very powerful. So that's a positive vision. I suppose the negative vision would be, well, continued sort of war between between these big companies to force us into sort of platforms that they control, and that increasingly AI gets invisible. Things like generative AI are very visible to us. We know when we're using it. But a lot of AI is just sitting there doing things in the background, like recommendation, which is useful, but we don't really know the effects of that. And then there's also the dark side of increasing use for deep fakes and those kind of things. And I think that could affect our whole information culture of like, do we believe what we see anymore? Because, you know, anything can be fake. And we're not very good at spotting a fake. I think it's more or less impossible. You know, there can be bad fakes, but if a good fake can be impossible to spot. So there could be real degradation of our like information culture, in which we kind of lose trust in a lot of what we see. So I think there could be, who knows which direction it will go. Let's be positive.
Yeah. Dealing with technology, having these two sides, so we have to stay positive and work. By the way, work, and this what help us to survive as a human being. I would like at the end to thank you so much, Andrew, and for sure I'm thanking my fellow Dr. Shaker Reda, because I think if we don't have this strategic partnership with the Royal Commission for Jubail and Yamba, I think this webinar couldn't be succeed. It could be done, but it will not be succeed as we expected. So I give you ending, Dr. Shaker, ending statement for this one to wrapping up this webinar. Please, Dr. Shakir.
Dr. Abdullah, Dr. Andrew Cox, thank you for all. As we came to our end of this session, the enlightening really, it's added much more of information that I was seeking for myself. I would like to extend my sincere really for Dr. Andrew for sharing for his insight, valuable insight. I also thank Nasij Academy for their collaboration, and this is what we are used to from Nasij. Looking for more in near future, as we saw the audience were not only from Saudi Arabia, not only from MENA region, it's worldwide. As you mentioned before, the three figures audience. Thank you very much. Thank for all attendees for their participation. Let us continue our journey and leverage the AI utilization for better of our society, and maybe all here today with the new knowledge and inspiration to make a difference. Once again, this is Dr. Shakir Reda Khoja from the Royal Commission in Saudi Arabia for Jubal and Yimbo. Thank you once again and wish you all the best. Thank you, Dr. Andrew, Dr. Abdullah, and Mr. Saeed, our also Mr. Salah Ahmed. Thank you for all.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shakir, and for sure that this will be the first drop of a heavy rain of our cooperation and partnership. Thank you for all our attendees. I know that there is a huge number of questions, the flow of this, but actually we have to stick to the time, which is already we exceeded about 26 minutes after, but I think this is something positive, even that we try to stick to the time. Thank you once again, Andrew, and thank you for all our attendees being part of this experience, and we look forward to seeing you in our future webinars. Thank you for everybody, and we will see you again in another webinar on the Naseej Academy window. I would like to thank my colleague Saeed and also the interpreter, Mr. Salah, and let's meet again. Thank you, Andrew. Do you need to just wrap it with a final word?
Thank you so much. You've been very interesting. Great questions. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. Have a great night.